All right, now that we're into fire season here for 2021, one of the duties we do have is for putting together fire weather verification. Usually falls on the swing shift to do this, but templates are in this directory, our NWS directory under operations verification, fire weather verification. So I started the 2021 folder with our red flags out now. If you remember, this is kind of the template we're using here to see if it's verified or not. One of the things that we encountered from past years that sometimes it can just go by the wayside and can be a little bit of a pain to go back and try to dig up the data to see if this is verified or not, especially with the wins in RH. So one of the things I did for this year is put together a red flag verifier page. So the way this works is basically you're just going to pick the time your red flag is in effect. So right now we're here on June 6th on a Sunday. So I'll select that, and I believe it started at 11 a.m. today and runs through 11 p.m. So to get this other time to show up, you just, if it's the same day, just click the same date again, and that will unhighlight or make this active here. So 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Just hit apply. All our criteria is already set to what it's defaulted to are 30 gusts and 15, less than 15%. For the Tahoe zones, it's different. There's another slider for that. So this can be adjusted to adjust your criteria, which I'll show you in a second. So just hit submit, and then it'll run through all the raw stations in our CWA and separate them out by zone. So for instance, zone 420 in this case. So during that time period, about 12 hours here. So if I click any ob, so like who's one that's hitting, click Desert Springs. So basically from 11 a.m. to, we're not to 11 p.m. yet, but it's going to go through and figure out if it hit or not for that hour. So if it's below 15% and gusts over 30, it's going to count as a hit. So anything that's a hit for that hour, it's going to color code that table row a red color in there, and it's going to count it. So basically we have Desert Springs, and so far we have 6 out of the 7 obs that have hit so far. So in this table, I'll show you the red flag hours is 6, and the total obs it has is 7. A couple of raw stations like Fish Springs, they do more than hourly obs, so they'll have more observations, but the algorithm will just go through and just count one ob as being hit for the hour. If, you know, let's say you had 4 obs within the hour, it's only going to count one of those as the total red flag hours as well. So you can just click any site on here, and it will show you the hourly obs. So if I just hit Walker in this case, only 1 has hit so far. The RH is pretty low, but it's mainly the wind gusts. This is keeping it from being hit or counted as red flag. So like I said before, you can tweak these values here for the non-Tahoe zones. If it's close, let's say it's like, oh, it was really close, but how many would have hit if I just hit 25 miles per hour in there? So if you hit submit and then select Walker again, and you can see by kind of tuning down that criteria, it'll show that 3 hours actually hit, and that's reflected there in the Walker red flag total hours down in this column there. So what this will also show you too is during that period you selected up here, what was the minimum RH during that period, and also what was the maximum gust here. So in this case, the highest gust Walker saw in that time frame was 30 miles per hour. You can see that too here in the hourly obs from this 1248 ob is when it hit that there. So as a quick glance, so you can also just go through all the obs in this way and to see, you know, the max gust, max sustained, min RH as well, to give you a quick overview of what happened that day. See the peak gust and also how many hours hit so far. So it's a quick way to kind of look at a zone in particular and just see how many hours have hit, which hopefully will speed things up when it comes to putting together your verification. So this link here, it's not valid up here. This is my own personal computer where it's stored on, but I'll send out the email you can, the link you can use for this page in the email. It will be an only in-house link that's where it's available, since there are some API keys that I can't publish publicly there. So this page will only be available in the office. If you time lengths too, I'm not quite sure how long you can do it, but I've tested out you can do at least for several months or even the whole fire season here. So if I go back, for instance, to last season, if we start, let's say, the start of May and go all the way through, say, December, and apply and submit, it will query all the data from the MesoWest API, and it'll do basically the same thing. It'll go through and crunch all these numbers, and it'll tell you how many hours, red flag hours there were in that, pretty much season time scale there. So as it goes through, you can see which sites are kind of more prone to the critical conditions out here. Here's the northern Sierra front. You can see Desert Springs way above anything else. So it's kind of interesting to see what you can find out at these time scales. Like, for instance, Galena only had pretty much 8 hours of red flag conditions last year. So you can also click on that link there too. And it might just take a second there. It's going through a lot of data, so it could take a little while. And so here you can see it populated all the hourly data from basically starting the beginning of May towards the 1st of December in this case. So if you scroll all the way down to where it starts, I might have gone too far. It'll basically do that same thing where it starts at the year, beginning of your time frame here. In this case, it was start of May, and it will go through and just highlight those hours that hit red flag conditions if I'm not too laggy here. But here's the case too. It'll display all those data too if you want to go through hourly by hour for months, basically. It'll do the same thing, but here it'll actually count them for you here. So there was 8 red flag hours for this site, or 131 for Desert Springs, so you kind of get the idea of all that there. It's a kind of more of an interesting thing just to see what happened there. And the same thing with the max gust and sustained and min RH through that period as well. It might catch some spurious gusts that might not be accurate, but it just kind of gives you a first glance. Snooper page. Everyone's familiar with this, but there is a nice URL functionality to it where you can input a desired set of observations you want to monitor as a group. So as an example, this is one I used for when I was on Creek Fire last year, where there's observations in the area that I wanted to keep tabs on real time. So really all you do is you plug in your station IDs up into the URL up here past the stations equal, and it'll give you a custom page of the obs you want to see. So for instance, if I did that with our lake sites here in our CWA, it's just pretty much putting stations equals JPL01 and all the Tahoe buoys and the pier and lake buoys there. So you can have a page that you can save off as a bookmark if you want to monitor just the lakes or mountains or whatever obs you want to take a look at. So it's kind of a nice way to just kind of customize things to keep tabs and SAA on the obs in our area. I'll also put this link in the email as well, so you can just directly copy and paste it and then add your observations you want in there. So it's a good way to just see things real time, and I would recommend using this. Some might use this observation page that I put together. I didn't really mean for this to be a real-time monitor thing. I purposely don't have it as an auto refresh. For that reason, there's other pages that do that. The Snooper and our Western Region page do a good job of it. But the really point of this is really for me to dig through and filter data quickly. So for instance, what I do when I come and shift here, like I want to know what happened the past, I don't know, 10 hours or 8 hours or whatever. So I can quickly pick a network and say, what was the peak gust during that period over the last 10 hours? You can quickly see what happened, what was the coldest site, what was the warmest site. These headers will filter stuff through to see what was warm, what was cold. So for me, the whole point of this was to just quickly filter data in a way that I would want to see here too. So there's a 5-day trend here, so you can also see the trend of like what was your recoveries overnight the past 5 days, plotting the lakes, and get a graphical representation of the obs too, whether it's 30 days back. So that's kind of the point of this page, but I would recommend if you're wanting to look at something in real time, use this custom Snooper or the regular Snooper page as well. So just something that's kind of helpful, and I thought I'd pass that on. Shift checklist. It's something that a few of us talked about and put together an example here. that can be used on shift. Eden got this going here and added some scripting to it for a couple of features I'll show you in a second here. But basically, it's something, it's just a Google Sheet that can be opened by everyone and used at the same time just to keep track of what's been done on shift. So it starts off with the night shift here, all the duties for that shift, followed by the day, and then right now I'm swing, so I'm making my way through that swing shift. But the way it works is you just go through, check off whatever you've done for the day, and it'll highlight it green and check off the thing you've done there. So there are some links here that you might use when you're doing these things, like for instance, you're doing a weather coder entry, so you can just click on that link there and it'll take you right to the weather coder, for example. So as you make your way through, just kind of knock off what you've been doing for the day, use some links to as shortcuts to speed things up a little bit. But you just go through and everyone can take a look at this and be in the same document at the same time. And that way you can just collaboratively make sure everything gets done for the shift in that way. So once you're done with everything for that shift for the day, ideally everything is done and everything is highlighted green in that case. So do it for all the shifts, and by the time you get to the end of the day, you've finished up everything. So everything's green for the day, and once you're done and everything's done for all 3 shifts for that day, you can just hit the uncheck button up here, and it'll trigger a script that I added to this spreadsheet that will just uncheck everything. So just click that. It'll take a second to run, and now everything should be good to go for the next day there. If you have any questions on this, just shoot me an email again if you run into any hiccups, but also provide this link in the email. So that's one real quick thing with the shift log. I did get some feedback that when new entries are made into the log, sometimes they can get buried if a lot of people start using this prioritize through date. So all these, when you do that it sticks these to the top of the entry. So some of the newer entries can actually get buried underneath there. So I did add a tab and made it a default. So it will sort these by the most recent entry. So whatever was entered last will show up at the top. So you can see what was the most recent entry done by whoever did it there too. There is still the other choice here to sort it by priority date. So when someone does put something to prioritize it through like a certain date to the 18th, in this case for TBL, for the problems they're having up there, it will still show up at the top. So you can just toggle through the tabs down there and see whichever view makes more sense to you. If you hadn't had time to play around with this, hopefully you've had some time to look around here, but just a few things I wanted to look over. I think a lot of this here is just really kind of just taking some time to explore where everything's located. It will take some time to get used to where all the new links, the layout is quite a bit different. But if you are having trouble trying to find something, I think one of the things I just want to point out is a search tool with the little magnifying glass in the right top right corner here. Just search that and it'll open up a search bar, and this is probably something that will be pretty helpful if you're trying to find something if you're not used to the layout so far. So for instance, if you're looking for iris, you can just type in iris in there as an example, and I'll list all the pages where there's an iris mentioned in there text-wise. So for instance, let's go for the that result there, and it's just going to take me to the home page. And so basically on this page there's iris somewhere. So if you do your Control F and just search for it there, you'll see where that link is located. So if you're in a pinch and trying to find something and not really sure where it is in the internet so far, it's one quick tool you can use. Other than that, if you some people have been editing some of their pages, which is great to see. I think most people should have permissions to edit these pages as well. If you don't have access, just send me an email. I can put you on there if I forgot about you there. But feel free to keep plugging away at your program pages and editing them as you would like. I just set up everything just kind of as a starting point for everyone, but feel free to make it your own. Just a few words on some of the other stuff, some of the scripting related stuff. This here, I think I got most of the bugs worked out from the product status pages. So you can see here, I'm just held off on issuing the RTP right now just to show you what that looks like in case you haven't seen that before. This will start pulsing red. You can click these buttons too, and that will open up the actual product page there so you can see the last one that was issued in that case. But once it's issued, it does take maybe like a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes once you issue it for the weather service API to see that product, and that will eventually stop blinking red when you issue it. So this may take a few minutes. Otherwise, everything else is here mostly unchanged. If you're just kind of curious what this little section was there, it's more of a quick essay type display for obs in our area. So it's taking a bunch of the mountain sensors and just giving you a heads up of like in the past 2 hours, what's the strongest gust that's out there, or the warmest and coldest temperature out there. Obviously, P-Vine is not working right now, and what's the driest location as a result. But like these valley and slope, this is pretty much taking the ASOS and RAWS networks, and from that, just giving you an idea of who's the hottest, who's the coolest, and who's the driest, for instance, or which side of all these is showing you the highest wind gusts here. For right now, it's just updating. And it's just a really quick way to, if you're coming on shift, just to see if anything's kind of slipped through the cracks, if there's high winds in the lake, and we don't have a lake wind. It's kind of an essay type thing for this. Take a quick snapshot of all the obs in the area. You can also click on these little identifiers, and it'll take you right to the hourly obs from our web page there at Western Region. So that's pretty much, I think, all I have for you. Is just more playing around. If you have any other requests or anything, just shoot me an email.